What? Everyone wants to feel important. You know, we all have our own headcanon as to how we're the main character, since we already live life through perpetual first-person view. There's no select button to change that shit. And to an extent, one day you will wake up and realize that the meta of being young is gonna get patched before random back pains announce that they're permanently joining your lobby, and you just then decide in that moment to live life how you want and actually be that first name appearing in the ending credits. However, the only time that could become an issue is when you negatively tear someone else down in your whole conquest to make yourself feel bigger. Just like the glory in Nintendo's whole dare type initiative against piracy that they feel taking down convenient websites will give them for like 5 seconds before the next link is added to the mega thread. I hope they know living from hit to hit is a problem, because a lot of people in the gaming communities have found themselves in the mini-map red zone of talking down on other people within the same damn online-based hobby as if they all aren't like one insult away from getting IP address dropped in chat. But more broadly and less peak Xbox live game chattedly speaking though, I always found the phenomenon of the players who chose the Madden NFL face button play of shaming gamers who were still active on last generation consoles after like a certain period of time just so interesting to me, man. I love things that don't matter. Of course, the bulk of these feelings and speech dialogue options were shared when we were all in younger ages, and it was a flex to even be playing online. If you had access to a Wii Points card back then, my life was basically in your hands at that point. But even still, a lot of us aren't that far removed from a time where you could farm upvotes, likes, and all the toxic validation possible when making memes about folks still stuck on older systems, or the widespread hate to see all these cross-gen titles releasing. Really, because for the most part, we lived through that era arguably up until like the last 3 years of the current 9th generation consoles that really should be 8.5. Let's be honest. Dude, the only thing more entertaining to spectate than players taking turns passing the Wii remote in the motion game of console shaming is the complete Mario Kart speedrun detour that the majority of players have taken against these opinions in the last year or so at the time of this recording, where we're dealing with so much shit like mid-life cycle console price hikes that get early access in other countries but still eventually become base game here in America. There is just barely any next-gen bias left in a lot of players' hearts anymore. Either nobody freaking cares anymore about what system you decide to boot up like twice a week, or you just can't escape a YouTube recommended feed of people damn near holding you at gunpoint telling you to just buy a freaking retro console with those titles. It's one of the best switch-ups I've seen in modern history that was born out of the overarching tragedy that is the path that the console market is unfortunately going down. And hey man, if we're forced to drive ourselves off the edge of the map in what it means to buy a console and the justification process going forward, the least that I can do is reflect on the days I told my jet engine PlayStation 3 that it was okay to be different. Because prior to the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and separate Nintendo release date timeline, the window of official support for the last generation of consoles was much shorter as far as what new games were coming out on a regular basis. At least when mostly talking about like the first party games, that is. You could just dance Wii until your batteries corroded with content. But the hardware upgrades across each new console generation gave developers genuine room to craft experiences that you could tell were only available on the new systems, and didn't need a side-by-side YouTube video to spot the where's my Watto ass differences. All I'm saying is, even if you weren't a GameFAQs forum super fan of gaming back in those days, you could still just see the justification in purchasing a new console from literally looking at the gameplay and library of games to choose from. It was the best case scenario to be in as someone who enjoyed gaming, but terrible RNG for those who also enjoyed it but still wanted to be social within the hobby on an already dusty console display budget. Like, on top of already stomaching the fact that there were good games releasing on the newest system, I still get flashbacks about all those games that bled over with last gen ports getting absolutely cooked online after 2015 when people would ask genuine questions about them and be reminded with backhand disses on how financially illiterate they were to not have whatever said console at that point. The irony was so pure you could have made an iron golem out of those statements. And sure, as a wizard I gotta call a spell a spell. Games that released in the cross-gen period before, like the 9th gen systems, usually either suffered from whole ass game modes just being cut, leaving you with basically a different version of that game, or the performance was such a downgrade that it felt like robbery paying full price for that last generation title. Between me and you, if someone important found out that I paid the full 50 for Black Ops 3 on PlayStation 3 back then, I might not be able to get a job. After I'd say around the 3-year mark into the next console generation, unless you were playing games that hadn't been ported to the next line of systems yet, or you were just using the console as a bona fide Netflix machine, a lot of players found themselves keeping their gaming lifestyle on L3 stealth mode if they were still maining the console that was rapidly leveling up its retro status. The only thing you could do was to just not give a shit as a person during these times to avoid the, criticism you might have heard. But if we're being honest, the pressure to upgrade just felt so much more imminent if you were investing yourself into the hobby as a fan of all the new things that were happening. But of course, nothing in gaming stays the same except for your local Walmart copy of Fallout 4 on PC that still hasn't sold all these years. Because just in this last year, well, hell, really in these last 6 months alone, we're getting surprise bandit sister Pokemon battles everywhere, aren't we? In this recent time frame, I've seen a lot of people convert their whole stance on the need to upgrade their consoles so soon or even at all, with the factors driving console gaming directly into the plateau arc of a graph you haven't seen since high school. Like, first of all, the first 2 years of the 9th generation systems were almost non-existent for PlayStation and Xbox, as most games you wanted to play first party speaking released simultaneously across the consecutive console lineups, which, for the most part, those guys were able to get like a season pass of acceptance from players due to the sheer amount of luck stat needed to even find those new consoles out in the wild back then. The drop rate was crazy before the chipset patch came in. But you see, players probably wouldn't have thought too much about these releases had we not lived in an era where these heavy-hitting games are stuck in the endless Windows boot loop of development hell, where we only get like 1 or 2 big games per year, if that. And that's only been heightened the players' attention when the main thing that we keep seeing is the difference between the third-party games releasing cross-gen now compared to the eras that came before, with how much longer it's been going on. And you can only attest that to the increasing horsepower of these consoles just being that much more capable. And keep in mind, we're talking about consoles from 2013 still decently running the latest Call of Duty, Diablo 4, and every sports game players treat like a subscription the way they annually pay for them. All these games obviously take a performance dip and, more importantly, like a frame rate dip compared to their next generation counterparts, but with how active and content that the current user base is with these games on last generation, like right now as we speak, in the hundreds of millions, it just makes you put your thinking cap on and realize that the current and rumored next generation consoles have potential to be so good that the crossover support might last even longer with the bona fide PC rigs that they're gonna try and still are right now selling us. I mean, look at Xbox and their whole full-blown PC adaptation story arc that they're going down right now. What are they doing? People have caught on fast to how long it takes for both new and anticipated IPs to finally release on the current systems, and just how asinine some of these price tags are becoming, to the point where it's easier to just embrace the console you already got in hand, since buying the new one is just like playing a game you bought on a Steam sale. You can just get to it eventually if you want to. The only side of genuine upgrades that I'd argue we're starting to see out of like newer release consoles is with Nintendo's whole stingy Switch family, where performance-wise they're like a generation or two behind. So for many, it is a big deal to play Tears of the Kingdom at 60 frames per second on a resolution that Nintendo games only saw via PC emulators beforehand. The game's still gonna do you dirty with the flurry rush timing, but at least the ragdoll animation is smoother. Thing is though, Nintendo has always had a nen-packed death grip on their fan base since the late GameCube days, I would argue, where people who are loyal to their games usually aren't like extremely swayed by the sort of lacking graphic fidelity of their consoles. They just know that Nintendo was going to make their games actually console exclusive and usually be the fun that they want to experience. Usually. So the conversation of being shamed for playing on last generation Nintendo hardware is kinda different, since there's genuine reasons to upgrades for some players, but who are we kidding, man? Even Nintendo is conforming to their last generation audience, since they aren't even exempt from the current economic game of chess the world's forces are playing, where the rules change every 5 goddamn seconds. There's still a lot of big hit games releasing on the OG Nintendo Switch due to the price of the new console hybrid and the fact that they already have like one of the most consoles sold ever within that, aforementioned 2017 piece of LCD screen. And no, I'm not just pulling this information out of like a random page in my spell book. Nintendo has officially gone on to acknowledge these conditions where the majority of their fan base is still playing on last generation. So if they're giving us the green light to appreciate last gen, you can only imagine how even the most diehard Switch 2 day one camera buyers feel about the situation right now. Spoiler alert, they're pretty damn chill about it from what I've seen. Because if the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't make your hypothetical wizard hat point all the way up at the thought of what it can do, then you'd just be crazy to just do away with the OG Nintendo Switch if it's still running just fine for you. Man, you would be crazy to do away with any last gen console or current console soon to be last gen without being an enthusiast of the contemporary gaming industry. Because that is a life lesson it seems many gamers are starting to learn as we all simultaneously grow older in this hobby that is catering to these online only live service games, really defining the direction of these consoles monetarily speaking, alongside of course, every other inflation issue we're dealing with now too. The pressure you see from gamers to buy the new console nowadays is just as a warning to buy it before the price hikes get to something nasty like it's a fucking stock market or something. It's sad, man, it truly is, but even a rose can grow in between thorns under the right conditions. All of this attention on the shortcomings of new consoles has allowed people to use the legacy hardware with pride as they realize what they truly aren't missing out on. Like I stated earlier, not only are players getting used to the value that the last generation will start bringing going forward, but people are so disconnected from the modern gaming industry market that they're going back to the retro consoles and freaking Black Ops Zombies waves, giving a lot of these older systems pretty much a second lifespan with all the games that they don't have to actually wait and play. I mean, I've never seen so much hope for the Wii U console since Breath of the Wild was first teased back in the day. So if that console can make a comeback, the world might actually know peace. There is just no real shame to be had anymore like you once did for playing on the console from the yesteryear. At least not from a logical and value standpoint, to where you can see what you get out of these new systems compared to the old ones that are starting to have less and less of a gap of hardware capability. Anybody else that's still trying to talk down on last gen for some other stupid reason is just someone who can't get shit for trying to trade in those last gen consoles when they're trying to buy the new one. Don't mind them, they got their own problems. As limited as we may may be in pushing the future of console gaming as we know it, I'm still proud to live and play in this current gaming generation because I would say it's the most diverse it's ever been, to where every console that ever existed is getting its love and flowers of just being appreciated for all the things that we might have taken for granted back when it was still new. And because of that, I just don't think that any point forward we're ever going to live in a time where it's not going to be cool to play on last generation. And that's all that I got for today, man. If you enjoy, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.